What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the sixth album by Van Halen. Basically, this project is called 1984 and it came out in early 1984. So the thing about this particular album is this is kind of a big staple of the 1980s decade. I'd have to say, particularly the hit song Jump was a big deal around that time. Just did like some synth stuff with pop rock and that sort of stuff. And a lot of these songs were pretty big. A lot of these songs were a pretty big deal on MTV, the music videos and that type of stuff, as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happened. But it was blocked from number one, getting to like number one on the Billboard 200 by Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was also a huge deal throughout the 80s, I'd have to say. But the thing about this particular project is just the fact that, yeah, it has some good stuff on here. It tries some synth rock on here. This album tries some new stuff with some synth rock on here, which was a big deal throughout the 80s as far as that pitch kind of happens. There was tons of songs. There were tons of songs later on that would kind of have like that synth rock kind of stuff. I don't know if it was particularly Van Halen's Jump that helped push along synth rock as far as that pitch kind of particularly kind of happened, but it was a big deal throughout the 80s and was one of the bigger songs of like the second half of the 80s. I would definitely have to suppose. Big deal in 1984 and that sort of stuff. Probably one of the highest selling. This album was definitely one of the highest selling albums of the 80s. It went diamond later on in 1999. It did go diamond, so it was a big deal around that particular time. So this is a big mid 80s kind of hit album. I'd have to say just within that pitch had 4 singles, so it did a lot of damage, just stuff like that. Three of these songs were had I want to say that at least 3 of these songs had music videos for them, which were a big deal on MTV and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and get to the singles here, and we'll get to talking about some of these. So the first single was "Jump," and this was like like I was saying, "Jump" was one of the biggest hit songs out of the '80s as far as that pitch particularly kind of happened. But this is a real nice one. This is like a glitzy kind of synth rock pop. This is like a glitzy kind of synth pop rock flash of a song. I would feel like this song feels like an MTV and 80s staple, I would definitely say, and it's just a feel good kind of mid paced dance hit, I would definitely say. So the thing about this particular song has a pretty distinct synthesizer riff on there. I would definitely feel like it's just a good hit song to kind of have. Like, once again, this is one of the bigger songs out of an entire decade, I'd have to say. Continues to be played on radio today. It's just a big staple on rock radios, stuff like that. It's a big staple on like rock radio, pop rock radio, that sort of stuff. So I want to say that this song hit number one. I'm fairly certain that it did. It was just a big deal. Just pretty much the fact that 40 years later it's still being played is a pretty good concept to kind of get that. It was just a great, excellent kind of song to kind of have within that pitch. It's a real nice one. Definitely should remind you of the 80s. This is just a good song when you want to go back to the 80s and say what were folks listening to around that time 40 years ago, things like that. Obviously, Thriller would be a nice one. There's some songs by Madonna. There's some songs by Prince. There's some songs by folks like that, Queen and some of those types. Queen and AC/DC, some of those type folks. You got songs like Back in Black, and then you have songs like like another one bites the dust and some of those type ones. So this is another hit song out of the 80s. I would definitely have to suppose good staple, I'd have to say. But another follow up to that that's pretty good. That was definitely a song that probably should have been more popular on Spotify. I was surprised that it didn't have more popularity. It was almost like a top 10 single is All Wait. This is the second single. Definitely All Wait is a definite hit song. This is like a malaise kind of synth rock late day makeshift of a song. I would feel like it's just a wind down kind of lounge lizard type music that it definitely is. And it's just a combo. This is a good combination. And this is a good combo song with Jump, I would definitely feel like. So there's just a good pitch to kind of get about this particular one. It's just some good stuff to kind of have. This is a more malaise-like one. I feel like Jump is the more kind of frenetic type one, the dance rock type tune to kind of have just for like dance clubs and things like that. But this is kind of more wind down. It's on the car ride home, stuff like that, the drive home, some of those type pitches as far as that kind of thing kind of happens. Going to the hotel, something like that, going back to the house, it's kind of more malaise wind down type music. I do feel like this is a pretty good pitch. This is a good combination. I'm glad that the synth rock type stuff was still on this album apart from just Jump. I realized that Van Halen is a metal band and a rock band and that type of stuff. I'm glad that they just didn't one shot Jump and then just not ever have another song like it. I'm definitely glad that there was like a follow up, even though it doesn't have the same glitzy type dance rock appeal of Jump. I would definitely say it's a good pitch to kind of get 2 of these just within that sense as far as how that kind of happens. These are a great 1-2 punch. Now the thing about the rest of this is there's not other synth rock songs. There's not really any other synth pop or synth. There's not really any other synth rock songs on this particular album. It's a short album. It's only 9 songs or 8 songs, not counting the intro. But I just would have to say there's 2 songs on here that have that synth kind of pitch, and that would be Jump and All Wait. Both these are pretty damn good. I feel like All Wait's kind of an underrated song. Definitely one of the best on the album, I'd have to say, in my opinion. I'd have to suppose that's a good concept. Panama is the third single. This is a nice one. This is like a stretching kind of summer boiler. I would have to say it's a muscle song. Definitely, it's just a hot weather kind of traverse times and late day kind of makeshift haze of a song, I'd have to say. So this is one definitely good. This is definitely good for some highway kind of music, this summer stretching stuff like that. Just kind of being out and about, just like in a trap. This is a song for being out and about in like a car traverse kind of sense. It's a good kind of one to kind of get in like that standard kind of haze of just like summer pitches. Great for June, great for July, great for August. Some of that type of pitch is great for June, great for July, great for August, great for some of that type pitch as far as like some summer stretching, just in the sense of being out and about in like the boiling heat as far as that particularly kind of has. This is some great songs to kind of have for some traverse just within that kind of pitch of just a great song to kind of have within the pitch of just being out and about, just standard kind of traverse. Some I would almost say an Aaron sense, this kind of makes it can kind of be makeshift, but I just kind of feel like it's kind of recreational, just in the sense of just really liking your car and things like that, just kind of being out and about and just enjoying some of the summer weather, I'd have to say. So it's a good pitch to kind of get that one. And then the fourth single, Hot for Teachers, a pretty nice one. This is the most energetic song on the album, I'd have to say. This is definitely a metal highlight, I would have to suppose. This is definitely a metal highlight. I'd have to suppose one of the most riff heavy type songs on this particular album. One of the craziest, like I was saying. So this is a metal kind of house party slash bar craze times of a song. I would definitely feel like it's a revved up kind of song. This is a revved up kind of song. It's got some good riffage, and it's definitely the album's craziest song. So I definitely have to say about this particular pitch, it's just a good bar hopping type tune to kind of have, just good house party type music, just some kind of almost like a dance tune, but a little bit more metal heavy, more of like a mosh pit kind of head banging type song. I definitely have to suppose. Some of this album kind of has like some residential type fare. Some of it's just kind of bar hopping, just kind of out and about and traversing some stuff like that. But there are a couple dance songs on here. I feel like Jump is obviously one. I feel like Good Girl Gone Bad is a pretty good dance one. Hot for Teacher and Good Girl, or I feel like Hot for Teacher and Girl Gone Bad are two of the more dance heavy ones, just in a more metal sense. I'd have to suppose it's just some good pitches to kind of get that, and then Drop Dead Legs is kind of another summer stretcher similar to Panama. So these songs on this album come in twos. So the songs on this album come in twos. I'd have to say you basically get a follow up song for each particular hit song that you get on this particular album. As far as that pitch kind of happens, you get a pair of songs for each particular pitch on this album. I'd have to say so that's a good, nice one. But Hot for Teachers is a pretty nice, crazy kind of one, just for like some good riffage and one of the more metal heavy type ones, I'd have to say. So that's basically the album in terms of singles, I'd have to say. So talk about the songs I recommend on here. Basically, there's 9 songs. Out of those 9, I wound up recommending 7. So the only real 2 songs I don't recommend on here would just be Top Jimmy and then House of Pain. To talk about those 2 songs real quick, Top Jimmy was another song similar to Panama, I'd have to say, and a little bit of Drop Dead Legs, but it just was not quite as catchy of one, I'd have to suppose. This one was trying to be like a more bustling, kind of out on the town type tune, especially more of like an old school town. It's kind of more town type music, just kind of more like this kind of uptown type tune, I would have to suppose. Just not a very good example of that one. I mean, it had some bustling riffage on here, like Eddie Van Halen's pretty good at that particular guitar riffage, just that sort of stuff on the song, but this was not as much of a compelling one compared to some of these other ones. I feel like Drop Dead Legs, Panama, Girl Gone Bad, some of those type ones, Hot for Teacher, were just better examples of those particular type ones. I felt like it probably could have just stood to have had a better album cut, but Top Jim was just not it, in my opinion. Then I'd have to say the House of Pain was another kind of clumsy one. This one, I just didn't really like the arrangements of the House of Pain. I just didn't really appreciate the arrangements of that one. It just wasn't really synchronized in terms of like the riffage and just the overall verse composition and things like that. As far as that kind of one, it's just not one I really enjoyed that much. That's about the only thing about this particular album. Those are about the only 2 dead weight songs I'd have to say, but the rest of this sounds pretty damn good. So talk about some other of these. Basically, like the 1984 instrumental is a pretty nice one. Definitely like this one. This is very similar to Jump in all weight, I'd have to say. It's just kind of a good instrumental just for brewing. This is just a brewing kind of synth intro. I'd have to say it's a good spacey and kind of zone out, kind of smoke a few type tune. This is a good spacey kind of zone out and smoke a few type tune, I'd have to say. And it's just good for some brief kind of ruminating. So this is another good highlight. This is another good reason. 1984, the instrumental is another good reason why there should have been more synth rock on here, I'd have to say, but still a good concept to kind of get that. And then Drop Dead Legs is a good highlight off here. This is a real nice one. This is a summer stretcher similar to AC/DC's Back in Black, I'd have to say. And it's just a good residential kickback blazer of a song. This one, I really saw a lot of similarities just in like the standard kind of riffage of this song. Very similar to AC/DC's Back in Black, I just would have to suppose. It's a real nice summer stretcher, just good for some summer heat, just a good June, July, August type weather as far as that approach kind of happens. This one's not as much of a Traverse song, it's just a good kind of hangout type tune and kickback type tune to kind of have just around the house, some pitches like that, just some good summer blaze as far as that kind of happens. And then Girl Gone Bad. Girl Gone Bad's another crazy one. Definitely like this one. This is an out and about kind of bad chick type vibes. I'd have to suppose good for a bad chick who really likes metal and stuff like that. I'd have to say some good stuff there. It's a Get Tore Up track, definitely. It's got some good dance vibes. This is a get tore up track, definitely. It's got some good dance vibes, I'd have to say, and it's just got an overall riveting pace. So this is a great song to kind of get buzzed to, get tipsy to, something like that. Just get real tore up, get cranked, that sort of stuff. As far as that pitch kind of happens, is good. It's got some good. This song has some great dance vibes, similar to Hot for Teacher and some of those type ones. I'd have to say, and Jump obviously has some good pitches to kind of have. And this just has a riveting pace. I definitely feel like so. This is just a good highlight. I'm glad that these songs are some highlights on here, especially the second half when you flip the record and that type of stuff. Just the fact that this is kind of a complete album. All the hits are not just at the beginning and stuff like that. It's pretty much packed to the gills, I'd have to say, for the most part. I just would suppose it's got some good moments just within most of that pitch. This is a pretty quality album here. I do feel like it probably needed another synth rock hit, but I'd have to say for the most part, it's pretty satisfying. For the most part, this album's pretty satisfying. So as far as what I'm going to score this album, me basically recommending at least 6 songs out of 8 on this particular album, plus the intro, the instrumental. I'd have to say I'm basically going to score this album like an 8.75 out of 10. If I had liked one more song, it probably would have been a 10 or a 9 or something like that. But I'd have to say it's just because there's only 8 songs, kind of short. Obviously, back in the record days, they kind of had to be, but it's just kind of the concept about it. It gets an 8.75. All 4 of the singles I recommend. It's got some good social vibes, stuff like that, I'd have to suppose. Good staples on MTV and things like that. It was just kind of the concept that, yeah, just once again, with there just being a couple of dead weight kind of songs that just kind of detracts from it. It's not like it's a big deal for the most part of the sense. I mean, in terms of like the impact as to what it would have been back in the '80s, this probably would have been like a 10 out. This probably would have been like a 10 out of 10 album because there's not too many albums I can think of apart from maybe Back in Black and like the Ozzy album, Blizzard of Oz, and some of those type ones that would kind of be like 10 out of 10 type projects, or at least 9 out of 10. I mean, in terms of impact in like the '80s, I probably would have said that this would have been like a 10 out of 10 album just because back in those days things were kind of more patchy in terms of like full blown fleshing out. You get the hit singles, the number one, some of those type things, and then some of the album cuts would be kind of patchy as far as that kind of happens, especially on like side 2 as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's not always like that, but I don't know. It just seems in some certain pitches it would kind of be that way. But that's kind of the concept. But I give it an 8.75. The social score I'm going to go ahead and give like a 9.5 out of 10, almost damn near a 10. Just if it would have had one more synth rock song or something like that, or just another type pitch with some craziness on the vibes of another one quite as crazy as Hot for Teacher or Girl Gone Bad, I would have definitely said this would have been a 10 social. But it's basically a pretty pitch album. This is a staple of the '80s. I would definitely say, like I was saying before, a good staple. Jump is a good dance hit, I'd have to suppose. There's some other ones I really like. All Way, that's a real nice kind of Malaise synth rock type tune. Like the instrumental on here, the 1984 instrumental on here. Like Panama, it's a good summer stretcher. Drop Dead Legs, Hot for Teacher, some nice ones. This has some good pitches overall, I'd have to say. So the social score is pretty rave. I would definitely feel like some good pitches to kind of get with that. In terms of the future, I'm not really sure what Van Halen's been up to. I mean, they've been around since possibly the '70s. I mean, this was their 6th album, and their 6th album came out in 1984. So it's kind of the concept. I get the feeling that they had been around since maybe like the early '70s, something like that. So it's kind of the concept about it. I'm probably going to have to review more of these. I don't know how many other ones. I don't know how many other albums they've dropped. They're like 5-star albums when it comes to stuff like Rolling Stone and some of those type places. But I'd have to say I'm going to get to some more of these, especially their '80s ones, to kind of see what other ones were kind of like a big deal and stuff. This is definitely one I would have to recommend quite a bit.